special edition of Real Law State with Patti and Kate.
Woo, woo.
So we are here at the Bold Real Estate beautiful office practicing social distance. I am in my cubby and Patti is in her office. Hi, Patti.
Hi, how are ya?
I am great. How are you doing?
Good. I think like everybody else, just trying to figure out what the heck is going on and where is it going and just trying to maneuver. I got a lot of people asking me a lot of questions and there's just so many things up in the air. It's hard. How about you? How are you doing?
Well, I'm doing okay. Business goes on. And one of the things that I think that is, kind of unique in the real estate business is that, we still have buyers that want to buy desperately. And we have sellers who want to sell. And so what we are doing is creating a whole set of criteria and best practices in order to minimize risk with people to continue the buying and selling process, and the showing process. So it's a little different.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I think a lot of people have taken it different ways. I've seen some agents at least say on Facebook, like I'm doing nothing and shame on everybody for doing something. And then other ones
the shamers.
I know. And, another ones, look, we're all under contracts. We still have fiduciary duties. Things still have to get done. Obviously we have to be cautious and we're all doing our best. And like you said, trying to incorporate some best practices. I know you had some showings this weekend. What have you seen out there?
Yeah. And let me just start by saying, I want to tell you from my perspective, right? So 2 weeks ago, they start saying that we're going to start getting, everything's closing down or whatever. Mad rush to panic buying ran to a bunch of stores till I could get in. Mad panic buying at Walmart. Right. A few days later, they say, you're definitely not going to be able to go out now. Mad rush to BJ's, right? $600 later, right? Next time, this is really it. They're closing down over the weekend, and my husband's going, we don't have milk, we don't have juice, back out. And so my house is so full of food, right? And I'm saying this not because, I'm a secret prepper, but because I feel like if I am out in this public, that's where I'm going to be likely to catch the virus, rather than when I'm practicing best practices on still showing properties.
Yeah, no, I think it's a really good point. And, I've kind of taken this whole coronavirus thing in stride, not really sure. I've been a little conservative in my approach, is it real? I don't know what's happening. But every time I hit that stupid grocery store and saw that the shelves were half empty, all of a sudden I had my own little panic. And I too, I'm loading up in my cart, and I got to tell you, I haven't had to cook in quite a while, and now all of a sudden I'm cooking.
I know, we were making cookies last night, and I was saying to myself, so if I am isolated, that I saw something, I think it was Erin Zell, who has a Solstice Yoga, put out, either I'm going to be out of this 10 pounds lighter in perfect fitness condition with all of my balanced chakras, or I'm going to have gained 10 pounds and be a raging alcoholic.
Yeah.
So it's there's two different ways it could go, right? So anyway, but back to the question. So 2 weeks ago, maybe even 3 weeks ago now, right? Big open house, a lot of people at my new listing. It was the same kind of thing. We were all being careful. People weren't taking papers, people weren't touching things. I mean, there was an awareness, but it was probably the turning point for having these open houses. And now what's happening is that the sellers are staggering showings. So they would say a block of, I think one woman said she was going to be there for 10 hours yesterday. Wow. Because every 15 minutes or half hour, they would let in the next clients. Okay. And then I had the buyers in this particular case. And so what I did was, we get to the door, you take your shoes off, you put a mask on. She made these little, really kind of cool. She took premium paper towels or whatever, they were thick, and she folded them like a fan. And she took 2 rubber bands on the end and she closed them over and stapled them. So she had homemade masks for us to wear. And then we also had gloves that she gave us. So, and no touching, right? Yeah. So you went through the house and you minimized your risk for touching. You minimized your risk to the home sellers by going through these steps. And so everybody that went in, and so I did a few showings yesterday. And for the people who had the realtors there, that's almost exactly what we did. The masks were the wild card. What are they giving us for masks this time, So, because masks are a shortage, right? By the way, just on that, I saw I think it was Michelle Saltmarsh showed her a homemade mask for her daughter that they're wearing at the hospitals. And I asked my daughter, who's a nurse, you know, are these cloth masks good? And she said, they're good for like transmitting it. She said, but they don't, but anyway, so we can make some cloth masks. We can have again, I'm off topic. So anyway, the only one that we didn't have to do anything for was this bank-owned property, right? And we had seen it at the end. So what we did was I still wanted the best practices for my clients, right? And this had been like it was a new listing. So we followed those best practices into that house as well.
Yeah.
So,
which is interesting. I think it's interesting that, you know, we had talked about earlier, it's just the bank-owned properties. I'm surprised they haven't taken a stronger stance on that. Banks are always trying to minimize any risk at all whatsoever, which is why if you're going to buy a bank-owned property, they give you like the Magna Carta to sign that says they're liable for nothing. So it's interesting that they're still letting people in. I know it's just a lockbox or whatever, but it's just interesting.
Well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. If we don't get that listing, I can remember this conversation.
Yeah.
Anyway, I want to get back, you know, on subject here. So tell me legally what you have been seeing for transitions from the legal standpoint.
Yeah. So I know last Monday, like you said, it's been the slow evolution of, you know, information and a slow evolution of people's reaction to it. So even our government, you know, we're in Massachusetts, you know, what's the governor going to do? And what are the registries going to do? And so we're all just, it's fluid, right? So we're just rolling with the punches. And as of last Monday, what rolled out from all the title insurance companies is they sent out some language to all the real estate attorneys. So, hey, add these to your contract. So it's a coronavirus. It's really about anything. It's, you know, acts of God and whatnot paragraph. But so as it applies to this COVID-19, you know, basically it says, in the event that either party can't perform under this contract, we're going to allow an extension. So the parties are agreeing ahead of time when they sign this contract that, God forbid, but if we get to the closing date and we can't close because either the registry is closed, right now they're accepting e-recordings, but let's just say we get to that point, they're not even doing that, or you know, the appraiser can't get into the house or won't get into the house, or their company won't let them go into the house, and therefore the banks can't get the appraisal. You know, and that puts off the buyer's lending. So we have this paragraph now that says if it's due to this COVID-19, to this pandemic, to this public health issue, we're going to allow an extension for that time to perform, which is important because we've talked about before, this is a time of the essence state, which means that if your closing date, let's say it's April 1st, if you don't perform, buyer, you don't come to the table with money, seller, you don't come to the table with a good title, you are technically in breach. So we don't want that to happen. We all are in this together and we're trying to figure it out. So adding this language allows that flexibility. And it also, what I've added to my rider is also an indemnification clause. So we don't want our agents, we don't want other agents, we don't want the bank, we don't want the appraisers, we don't want any of those people, the closing attorney. We're all doing our best and we don't want to be held liable or sued when the contract can't be completed, when things are out of our hands. So that's what we've seen, and the language just keeps beefing up a little bit, I've seen.
Yes. So I'm going to pull up the COVID rider that came from Massachusetts Association of Realtors, and you can kind of pick it apart a little bit. I got a question for you though.
Yeah.
So I have a PNS that we're in the process of getting signed, and the buy side wants to extend it just for 60 days according to their attorney. And I'm saying we should really think about this addendum as a way to handle it. Do you have a legal opinion on that, or do you think that it's whatever works?
Look, you have somebody in a contract, we don't know what's going to happen. So sure, I could beef it out just 60 days, but I don't know what's going to happen in 60 days. So why not have a date that makes sense now? Because for right now, this is how things are. We can't predict the future. People have all their crazy theories. Registries are open. Banks are doing, I even heard some of the lenders are waiving some of the appraisal requirements because of this. So everybody's trying to work to keep it completed on time. So I would say keep it on the same track of 45 days out, etc. but have this addendum that gives everybody the flexibility. So if you have to extend out, you have the right to do so, and you're not going to, you know, risk your losing your deposit.
All right, awesome. Hey, listen, I pulled it up. Can you see it okay?
Yes, and actually that looks like the addendum I drafted.
Ah, maybe this is yours. We'll see when we get to the bottom. Okay, maybe this is yours, and we have to go to MA Realtor after and get theirs.
Okay.
So walk me through it.
So just up top here, I don't think I can move it along. So just that time for performance. So like I said before, this is actually a little broader than just COVID-19. So the time for performance, which is your closing date, can be extended by either party by written notice for an excused delay. So what is an excused delay? Those are your mandated quarantine, your war, acts of terrorism. I mean, there's just so much more in there, but this came out because of COVID-19. And then so it allows you to extend the time. It also allows you to extend the time, or it takes into consideration your mortgage commitment. So if I have to extend out, but my mortgage commitment isn't locked in, or my rate lock is going to change, although rates are looking pretty good right now, you can adapt to that, and maybe buyer just wants to get out. But this one particularly says about 14 days out. And of course, we don't know where that 14th day is going to land, depending on when you're going to close. So if it does land on a weekend or a holiday, we're going to extend out to the next following business day. And then further down, it's just that indemnification. So these interested parties, we don't want them to be held liable. Your lender, your appraiser, your listing agent, buyer's agent, seller's attorney, buyer's attorney. We want them to not be held liable. So that's what all this is.
Awesome. So good. I'm glad we got to yours first. All right. So thank you. Now I'm going to pull this down, and maybe if I am lucky, I'm going to get to where I want to go here. File, new tab. Okay, so now I'm going to go to the MA. I'm just going to pull it up. So it's MARCOVID19.com.
Well, you got a little bit of a misspelling there, so I don't know if you can get
my glasses on. Oh yeah, there we go. Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah.
MAR COVID-19. All right, so now I'm going to search that. Okay, so here we're going to the, can you see it?
Yep.
All right, perfect. So this is for all realtors, and this is going to help in anything that is, in this case, specifically related to the coronavirus updates. And by the way, kudos to them for getting this out in such a great comprehensive look and very easy to understand.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this one here is information on transaction business, including government offices, business closing, open houses, etc. So kind of some of the best practices we just talked about. What happens for licensing and education? This has been something for my group. And then the language to use in contract forms and contracts. So this is the one I want to try to, there we go. All right, so here's the forms and extensions. Here's a sample. Okay, so the next thing to talk about right here would be the smoke and carbon monoxide. So I'm going to pull this up a little bit, and I'd love your legal opinion on this. What does this say?
So the state came out, which is so interesting because you and I had talked about, hey, what are we going to do about this? And so I had created an addendum for our office, which took a little bit of a different stance. But let's talk about the states first. So the state came out and said, hey, look, it's a requirement of closings that this smoke detector inspection, carbon monoxide detector inspection takes place prior to closing. So you bring that little certificate of compliance to your closing, showing that you complied. Fire department's the one who issues it. So we've heard locally a lot of the fire departments suspended doing their inspections. Well, that's going to put a damper on things. So the government came out, Massachusetts came out and said, hey, you know what? We are going to defer or allow a deferral of the issuance of the certificate of compliance for the smoke and carbon monoxide inspections until post-closing if you can't get it done. So it's not just, so if your fire department is open, you still have to get it done.
Okay.
But if it's not, we still want these transactions to go forward. There's a lot of consequences if you don't. People have got a lot going on. So they're saying that the buyer has to assume getting this done post-closing. They're saying it has to get done within 90 days post-closing.
Okay.
And there was another thing in there. Buyer shall deliver.
The buyer shall deliver a copy to the head of the department.
Yep. So at the closing, what's going to happen? So this is just kind of a guidance. They're saying it's allowed, but what the closing attorney, no doubt, is going to do is have some kind of a form that everybody can sign at closing, acknowledging the responsibilities here at closing.
Okay.
Buyer, you are in fact going to assume that.
All right. Awesome. Okay.
So the only things I do want to bring up on this, and this is why mine is a little bit different, because my thought was, okay, first, this is a seller obligation in a normal transaction. So now we're shifting it and we're saying, buyer, it's now your obligation.
Right.
And that makes me a little nervous from a liability standpoint. So God forbid, and I knock on wood a lot, God forbid.
You're a wood knocker.
I am a wood knocker. So God forbid there's something wrong with these detectors, and then buyer takes title and God forbid the house burns down. Like,
you're right.
So I had put into mine, and
you
maybe
have yours with you. Would you like me to turn the screen over to you?
You can try. I can see if I can try my hand at it.
Okay, so what I'm doing right now is I am going to wait a minute. Let me just see if I can find it. We may not want to push this on this. We're doing a pretty good job.
Okay, I could just talk on.
Yeah, why don't you walk us through it? Because I don't want to mess us up.
Okay, so couple of things I put in there, that it is the seller's obligation. So if we're going to pass title, I understand why it becomes the buyer's obligation post-closing. Just
on the house.
They are the ones in the house. Yep. So they're going to have to let the fire department in to do these inspections. So I understand that part. However, it was a seller's cost. And depending on where you are in the contract negotiation, if you're already under a contract, it's still the seller's responsibility. So I had put some language in there that said, hey, seller is going to have a holdback. So they're going to have a holdback from their net sale proceeds. And I think I threw in a number there of $500 to be held back to make sure that that certificate gets paid for. And if any of those detectors are in fact faulty, that the buyer has money, or whoever's going to buy them, to replace them. It shouldn't really be the buyer's obligation. It was always the seller's obligation. If they're already under contract.
Maybe we should have a blend, like it's the sellers have a holdback, but it's the buyer's responsibility. Would that be like?
Yes. So
that would be the best way to do this, because I could see buyers getting a little grouchy about that. And
so I think it's financial obligation of sellers, but it's actual procedural obligation of buyer to get it done. So I get why the buyer has to do it, but really the seller should have to, be on the hook to get that done. And we've seen over the years different scenarios. So, that law changed quite a bit. And so people, maybe they had hardwired smoke detectors. Right. And at some point in their ownership, something happened to that detector, so not working. So they just went out for a quick fix. They're going to still own it. They weren't anticipating selling. They just bought a battery operated one and they just put it up there. That's just for them and their family. Fine. Now it's time to sell. They're not thinking like, oh, that was hardwired, so I got to put that hardwired back up. And now the buyer has assumed the responsibility for this. And so who's paying for that? I'd be pretty ticked off if now I have a $250 electric bill for installing a new hardwired smoke detector that I wasn't anticipating, especially from a first-time home buyer, right? I mean, funds are tight. So I think having that holdback is really important, just to make sure the buyer is getting what they anticipated in getting. Oh, and I also put in there, I just thought this was important too, is that the buyer has the right prior to closing, so during their walkthrough, to actually go through and test each and every one. Just let them test it. They can feel good that, hey, these are beeping, these are working, they're in good working order. And if they're not, seller has to bring a brand new one to closing so it can be installed or something like that. There should be some level of comfort for the buyer.
Should be like best practices should be like, if you're the seller's agent,
yep,
have your seller go through the steps they would have getting ready for the inspection.
Yeah,
as a best practice to minimize the risk that this is going to be something that gets ugly after.
Absolutely. I think that's perfect. And then just to kind of bootstrap that is to allow that buyer to then go through and say, yep, you know, they're working, you know, or it appears that they are working correctly. They may not be installed correctly, but they appear to be working. Just something, because to rely on a complete stranger that they did it correctly, that's the whole reason why we have the fire department come in, because it's a third party coming in to verify. And now we're taking that out. So now you're back to the two sides relying on each other.
It may be that this has changed by the time these, you know, we get to the end of the rope anyways.
No, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So this is great information. You know, part of me is a little sad because we're not talking about Dirty Dozen. It's almost like we're having an arc within an arc.
Yeah. Well, you know, we got to roll with the punches, right? I mean, we'll be back to that.
Our claim to fame is smarter real estate. And I think that, you know, with you from your legal aspects on this, and you're so on top of it, and a little bit with me, with my experience. And, you know, I think that it's a great blend of information for people.
No, absolutely. And I think just having to put it together, like you're keeping the deals together, I'm keeping the legalities of it all together. And then on either side of this coin, neither one of us has been through such thing ever in our lifetimes. So we're just navigating uncharted waters, and we're doing our best, and we're trying to do the best for our clients at all times, make sure everybody feels good about it. Everybody feels taken care of. We're completing our fiduciary duties, and that's all that we can do.
And we're minimizing the risk of anyone getting
minimizing risk.
And we're trying to, again, just take care of our people, which has always been what we say, is like we exceed expectations. We're looking to do the best that we can. And I thank you, Patti, for coming in on Sunday and getting this ready and prepared so we could have a ReaLAWstate with Patti and Kate. And we'll catch up tomorrow online for our sales meeting.
I think so. Yeah, because we're doing that, I think, virtual via Zoom too.
We are. We'll be the same bat time, same bat channel tomorrow.
Love it.
All right. So friends, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. You know, the reason we do these is because we want to be one of your sources of information. We feel like, you know, I don't know, we love you. We want to take care of you. And so let us know if there's anything we can do.
Awesome. Bye.
See ya. Bye-bye.